All right. So here we are doing our podcast. Good thing you found the AI tools to remove and ums because
yes.
I just started with that.
But are we paying for those tools?
I don't know. Let's see. I mean,
How bad the ums are?
right, yeah, and if Monster wants to wants to sponsor us, maybe get that Monster money.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm Sean Rains.
Jim Woods?
And this is the Job Board Podcast. Jim is employed. I'm semi-retired.
Early retirement.
Early forced retirement.
Yes.
It's not something that I ever thought would happen. And I had this idea, shared it with Jim, that we would talk about what the transition's like. So Jim and I, the way we met was and became best friends is we worked together at the same company. And we've both been fired by the same company. That's a bond
Yes.
that is really hard to break.
And a bond that many people share from that company.
many people.
And probably with a lot of companies.
yeah, absolutely. But one thing that I noticed was when I'm having all these conversations with everybody about what happened, there wasn't really a lot of resources on what to expect as you're going through this, but there's been a lot of advice. There's a lot of colloquial advice. So shared with Jim that wanted to do this podcast and talk about it. Wanted it to be something that we both enjoy and wanted it to be conversational. I did take the time today when I was getting an oil change on my 4Runner today to write down a few questions.
Okay.
3 questions. Now, I'm surprising.
3? Okay.
3 questions. I'm surprising you with the questions. But I was thinking before that, maybe we just kind of give a talk about what do we think this is going to be like? Like, what do we think? What are you expecting out of this?
What am I expecting? For us personally or for people listening?
Both.
For us personally, I think it's just something fun that we get to keep doing together, right?
Yeah.
We worked together for 17 years. I think I was there. Mm-hmm. And the two of us just clicked really well, I think, in that job.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where I feel like when I left, I think it strained us a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we were like separate. Sure. I think you probably felt guilt because you were still there and I wasn't. And then you left and I'm like, been there. Like, and I think it's a way for us to just keep that connection that we had before, just in a different medium. And then I think for listeners, it's a lonely place to be when you get let go. It's just a really lonely place to be. And a lot of people reach out and a lot of people offer help. Some of it's genuine, some of it's reactionary, I think. But I kind of feel like there isn't a lot of good real world resources from people that are just not trying to make money. Like the counselors and the help and stuff like that. And it's just like, what's their perspective? It's probably very different. And they hear some stories, but it's still in a different setting. It's very different. And I think there's just so many people that have been through either this or other transitions or other changes. Some you connect with more than others. So just trying to get that out there, I think could be helpful.
Yeah, I completely agree. The reason that I wanted to start this was I think for me, I found the conversations I was having, they were varied. A lot of the information I was getting was in suggestions I was getting were different, but each story was compelling and inspiring. And there's people I've talked to that found themselves involuntarily separated with their company, and then I've found people that they did it on their own and started something else. Like a woman that was on my team for a long time, she just started her own grooming business, and she got burnt out in the corporate world, and she's doing great. I just texted with her today. So she's somebody that I think we could have on and talk about that, just to get a lot of different perspectives. And I thought it was interesting that a couple of things that you just said I think are very interesting. You're right. I did feel guilt because there is survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
So maybe even people that are going through that, maybe you work for an evil organization that's firing a bunch of people right now and you're the last one standing.
And selfishly, you want to stay, right? Like selfishly, you're just like, I feel bad for him, but woo, I'm good.
Glad it wasn't
and
me.
how many
Yeah.
rounds of that did we see where it was not us?
Yeah.
I mean, it was 10 plus years of when it wasn't us.
Yeah.
Now it is.
Yeah.
So, the reality is that's going to hit you at some point.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Totally agree. And I think, and you're right. I think there was a little bit of a strain because you don't know what to say, and maybe some of our listeners can come to this to hear stories like our stories that are employed that do have friends that have lost their jobs, and they get a little insight on how how do you talk about these things. And do you need to grab that?
No.
Okay.
Spam.
Like I said, he's working.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah. Probably someone trying to sell me something.
Right. And I want people to laugh. I want people to have fun. I want this to feel like a conversation. So I think it would be good to hear from people what they want to hear from us. Like, what kind of content do they want to hear? So I think that'll be something when we get on our social media channels. We'll start to get things. And,
Yeah, when people actually start listening to us.
Right now, it's probably just going to be
Yeah.
like, I think your mom will listen to it. My mom doesn't even know how to really use a computer. So
Well, it'll take me 20 minutes to show my mom how to listen, but then we'll get there.
So that's awesome. Okay, cool. Well, I guess you kind of went into the first question. The first question that I had that I was curious is, what was the most surprising thing when, after you got laid off? What was the thing that, like, good or bad? What surprised you?
I think what surprised me the most is how much it affected me. So I was ready to go.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and there's always jokes around the office. Well, they're firing another round this month. Like, who? Well, if it's me, and it's always joking, and you think you'd be okay with it, right? And the reality is, I was already looking at other jobs. So I already had one foot out the door because of the way things were going. And I thought if this happened, it wouldn't bother me. Like, it'd just be like, all right, well, it is what it is. But it bothered me, and it bothered me a lot. I think what stung for me too was it wasn't just me. It was like my team, right? So it wasn't just me getting let go and being moved. My whole team pretty much got washed, except for a few. And that was it. Like, that was all we had. And that team we had, we were together so long. So I think that probably garnered into it.
It was a really good team.
And I think that played into it. So I think that was, the hardest part for me, was just how rough it was for me in the upfront and in the beginning, and how long, and the fact that you never really get over it. You don't. Like, it's been 5 years, almost 6, and it still bothers me. You still sort of have PTSD over it. Like, every job since is like, am I good enough? Can I keep this good? Like you're always fearful that you're just going to get fired again.
I hear that.
Right?
That's like a constant.
Yeah, and it's just like, and so there's always this sense of insecurity that you can't get past, it seems. And I've gotten better with that, but it's always there. Like, and it just rages periodically type thing. So that was surprising. I think on the positive side, I think the surprising thing was the number of people that reached out that I hadn't been in contact with for sometimes years, that they're reaching out. Hey, what can I do? How can I help? And at first you just think it's them just being nice, but like, legit, anything they would ask you for, you would ask them for, they would do their best to do. And it's like something that, like, I haven't contributed to this person in any meaningful way, and that yet they're doing this for me, which is a really nice thing. So I think that was kind of nice. I would say the vast majority of those people were all people that had been laid off at one point in their life. Anybody that has never really been laid off, kind of crickets, right? Like, you don't hear from them much. And I think it's just, and it's not that
why do you think that is?
Yeah, I don't fault them for it. I think you just don't get it until you've been through it.
Yeah.
Right? And you don't realize that your next job is more based off of connections than how good your resume is. Yeah. Right? That's it. Like, resumes are, I mean, shit, they got computers reading your resumes now,
Creating
and
them.
that's
AI's creating resumes now.
and that's what you're being judged on, whether an actual person is going to look at your resume is based off of, did you put together a sentence with these 3 words in this right way?
Yeah.
So a lot of times you're not even considered for jobs that you might be phenomenal for. So those connections, I think that was a good thing. I think the other sort of weird thing, and I think this is male perspective here, was society in general expects you to have a job, right? Like, I've got the kids, I've got, it's over the summer, so I'm taking the kids to all these activities, and the only question I get asked by other parents is, what do you do for a living?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, that's like the first question you ask somebody, like
Right.
on an airplane,
Right.
like in
So
an
when
elevator.
you're out of a job and you're at a function, like, I got fired.
Especially if you're with your family.
Right, yeah.
You're
Yeah,
in line at Disney World, so what do you do? Nothing.
Yeah, I got a sugar mama now because I can't. Like, my wife's the sole earner. And it's just, I don't know if that's, I would feel like that level of shame a little bit is across the board, regardless of gender. But I think, it's the same thing. Like, a lot of times women just get asked about their family. Like, guys, it's like you just get asked about your job, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, so you put you in a really weird position, and you just don't want. Oh, the vacuum's on it. It's not happy. Yeah. He agreed. The vacuum.
Yeah, I mean, we are at the Woods Palatial Estate.
Yes, and it's summertime, so the kids are home and making a ruckus upstairs.
Right.
Hopefully, the mic's not picking it up. But so I think that was a hard thing to deal with, ego wise.
Yeah.
So not only do I have the ego issue of I got canned, and I was really angry because I couldn't quit before they fired me, which stunk because I'm looking for a new job. So I wanted to find a new job so I could go to them and say, here's why I'm leaving, and this is why this isn't working. The reality is they wouldn't have listened to me anyhow, even if I would have gone in and said that, but I wanted the satisfaction of doing that.
Yeah, you
and
had
that
closure.
Kind of got stripped away, right? And then the ego fact of, I got fired. I mean, there's fancier names for it, laid off, and
Right. Everything to make you feel better about it.
yeah, and it's just like my UK colleagues they call it. My position was made redundant. Yes, that's how they phrase it over there. I was like, oh, that's kind of nice. Like, you were made redundant. I think that's a lot better than being laid off or fired. But that's pretty much what happened.
Or
to
eliminated.
You.
Like,
Right.
I think, it's, how much of your identity do you think was tied up to your job too? I don't think that's
a lot of it,
gender thing.
right?
I think both. I think all genders probably have that, but I know my identity was kind of shook.
Well, it was a career that I started in high school, right? Like, so for me, it wasn't just a major in college. This was something that started for me in high school and was my entire professional identity was very linear, right? And it was always this path. And I did quite well with it, and then it just ended, right? Outside of my control ended, which just stunk, right? Like, and it's just, and then you've got a team that relies on you, and then theirs has been ended as well. Like,
Yeah, I think that's a lot different than, like, I had concerns about my team. I still love my team.
Yeah.
Everyone on my team. I had great teams all along and made great friendships during that time. But I think the last iteration of my team was probably the most felt like it wasn't family. Like, I read a lot about how toxic it is to say, like, or if you hear in an interview, we're like family, that means they're going to abuse you.
It's like the free dinners at Yahoo because they expect you to work 16-hour days.
Right. So I don't want to say we were like family, but we were like really good friends.
Yeah.
And we support each other. And I think it's interesting that I believe we both felt worry and concern and sadness about our teams. Yours was more because they also got let go, or the majority of them got let go. And then for me, it was almost like I worried because I know the environment that they're now not alone in. I mean, they have a good manager now. They did end up under someone who I really respect, but I still worry about them. I still think about them. because you can't help yourself. I think that's something you and I have in common is it's really hard to divorce yourself from your job. And I'm going to brag on you a little bit, and because it's me, I'm also going to be bragging on myself a little bit. But I think that's what makes a good leader is somebody that is willing to be vulnerable with their team, expect a lot from their team as much as they expect from themselves, but you genuinely care about your teams.
Well, for me, there's probably people that will argue this. My commitments to my is to the people in my team, and this will sound bad. My commitments to the people below me, not to the people above me.
It doesn't sound bad at all,
right? Well, I don't like saying people below me. Like that just sounds.
Yeah, I know.
That's
Yeah,
what I mean when it sounds bad,
higher,
right?
yeah.
But like when you look at it, like I'm here, I got.
I mean,
people
it's an
that
org
report,
chart. I mean,
right?
It's the system that we're in. Yeah.
Yeah. When you look at that org chart, my commitment is to the people under me, not the people above me, and with the hope that with that commitment, that I make the people above me happy because we're doing the right things and we're driving business and we're doing things that we need to be doing. But if I have someone above me asking for something that I feel is completely unreasonable, I will fight it tooth and nail if I feel like it's a detriment to my team. And there's sometimes I just get overruled and I just can't, right? And you got to do what you got to do. But like 9 times out of 10, it is always like, how does that impact my group with what they're asking and what the demands are? And that's where my commitment is. And if I got to take some lashings because their life is slightly easier, I'll take those lashings all day long.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that got taken from you. And that's the hard part. I think it's really interesting that you mentioned people reaching out that you were surprised by, and I do agree, because I will tell you, having been on both sides of it, which I think you were too, right? That was the first layoff that you've ever experienced.
Yeah, I got fired from Little Caesars in high school, but I would say
who hasn't?
That's a little bit different.
Who hasn't?
You
shouldn't have added that third pizza.
Yeah,
It's not pizza.
Yeah,
It's just pizza.
Well, I'm a giver.
Hey,
so.
Little Caesars, you can sponsor us.
Yes.
Even though you fired Jim.
I'm sure that manager's not there anymore.
Yeah.
Well, it might be.
But it's so surreal, and like your colleague mentioned about being redundant. I've been telling people like a lot of what I hear from a lot of people that haven't been fired is you can't take it personal. Like I've heard a lot of people say you can't take it personal, or try to tell me like don't take it personal. And in my head right now where I'm at is how the hell do I not take it personal? Like
it's 100% personal.
It's 100% personal, and like they say like well the language they used with me was your position was eliminated. So like I almost wish they would have said, well, you stink and we think you're a motherfucker, so you're out.
Right.
You
did a shit job. You didn't listen to me on these last 3 things, so that you're done.
Or you just don't fit in. We don't like you. You don't fit. Like I would much rather. But legally, I guess they can't do that because I guess I could sue at that point possibly. Maybe, I don't know. But the idea that they eliminated the position. So it's like not only do you take it personal, but then it's like also everything you were doing we don't need it. Like we don't need your position. And I was talking with a colleague. I don't know if you worked with Casey, but I was talking with Casey at dinner on Monday. Casey Sims, you might not remember.
The name sounds familiar, but yeah.
And he said, I told him that. He was like, no, you can't look at it that way, because he said all your work just went over to the team that stayed. And I said, yeah, I understand that, but it's really, I guess where I'm going with all this is it's really hard to explain to somebody who's not really been through it, or maybe has a better self-esteem than I do. And that PTSD, I mean, for me is you can get into a loop where you get down on yourself. And I think it's important to try to, you want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself and you're allowing yourself to have those feelings. But I also feel like it's important for yourself to give yourself a little bit of grace and actually listen to some of these people.
Yes, because the reality is these people wouldn't be reaching out and offering to help if they didn't feel like they either liked you as a person or they liked what you did in your role, and when they worked with you at some point in time. Because the reality is you don't want to recommend somebody into a job that you think is going to fuck it up. right? Like,
yeah, or fuck
that's-
you up.
Right,
Yeah.
like, because it's a reflection on you. You recommended that person and they were terrible, right?
Right.
And like, you will catch crap for that for years.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think it's good to note that if people are willing to do that and willing to reach out, you've got people that believe in your skill sets, and I think that's pretty crucial. And to go back on your thing of like what you do doesn't matter, let's be honest. As soon as the books are closed for the year, what you did that prior year doesn't matter anymore. Anyhow,
it
right?
didn't matter.
Like,
Sometimes it doesn't matter the time you turn it in.
So I think as soon as that bonus check hits for everybody on top, the reality is what you did prior doesn't really matter. And there's exceptions to this, like all the time, but I think for big corporations, it's probably the worst.
Yeah.
And I think the only thing that does matter, and the only thing that gets you along, is the relationships.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's all the relationships.
Well, like all of a sudden you don't talk to people all day.
Yes.
It's like one day you go in and you have conversations, whether it's pandemic, work remote, whatever. You're talking to people.
Yeah.
And you're having decent conversations. They might be frustrating conversations, but you're talking to people. And then it's like, no, you're not talking to anybody.
Yeah.
Unless you reach out or somebody reaches out to you. And
Yes.
yeah. So on that, I guess the next question was, who surprised you?
Who?
Yeah, good or bad.
Oh.
And you don't. I know. I know you don't want to name names, and this is my first. And I think this is your first time doing a
surprised
podcast, so I'm sure I can beep names out, whatever. But
No, I think.
I mean, it's your
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. So I would say, I don't know if it was a surprise. Like I would say my wife was probably the person that gave me the most grace during that period and for the length of time and the encouragement, because it couldn't have been easy for her, right? At all.
Yeah.
You're suddenly becoming the sole breadwinner. Everything's relying on you, benefits, money, everything.
Yeah.
And there's a lot there.
But we all know you married up.
Right. Well, we all did. So that's the whole point, right? Like, so it's one of those things where I think so again, I don't know if I was surprised by it. I guess at the level, maybe, the level of it, I would say was surprising. But you kind of hope that that's there and expect that. Yeah. As far as people go, really it comes down to, I had two people that I had somewhat worked with in the past. One that I worked with a little, Paula Wilder, who I worked with a little bit in the past, and she would come and we would contract her to do some team building events and stuff like that at work. And she reached out like as soon as she found out, and actually helped me secure my next job. And this wasn't somebody I worked with day in, day out. This was somebody that I might have a 4-hour interaction once a year with.
If
that was
that,
willing,
right? I mean,
to go through and go to that level. And then the other person was Jeff Smith, who is my wife's career coach at the time, and he's big in this area. And he just offered to sit down for free to talk to me about it and like see what I'm doing and reach out to his connections, and so forth. So it's like I had these two people, very minimal, if zero, long-term relationships with. So a lot of their experience with me has been very short. That were willing to go to that extent, and have me sort of go into and help me find a job. And then I think the other surprising thing is there's basically a club of people that have been fired from our previous organization.
That's true.
It's like a legit club
and
of
people.
people.
And they all live around here.
And like as soon as it happens, they just want to like party, drink, and hug you. Like they're just like, yes, welcome. Like you're finally here. Like and it's shocking. It's not that shocking how many people are in that club, but how excited they are for you that you're not there anymore. Yeah. And so I think all of that's quite kind of, you're just like, oh, like, and it's just kind of weird. And I don't know if that's just this organization, if it's other organizations that have that as well. I would imagine it's got to be other organizations as well. But there's always that sort of that group of people. And I think, it's beyond that. I think everything was kind of what I anticipated. I did have some people that reached out from work that I hadn't worked with in years. Terry Gonzalez, Matt Lewis, that I hadn't talked
Matt's
to in
been
ages.
really helpful.
Yeah, and they're just like just good people willing to help, and because they've been through it or been, and kind of done that, and I think it was just they spent a lot of time in back and forth conversations with me that they just didn't need to do, honestly, but wanted to legit help, which was just great.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Terry reached out pretty much right after, and was, I forgot he's been through it. I mean,
multiple times. Like, he keeps going to these phenomenal organizations. Like he went to like Peloton, and then Peloton's like, well, shit, no one's buying our Pelotons anymore. Everybody's getting fired.
It's all because Mr. Big died.
Yeah. But I just Terry's been through it, and I think for Terry now, I love that. Actually, we should talk to Terry because I think Terry's been like, does it just not bother him anymore? Has it happened enough where he's just at a point where he's like, look, I keep landing on my feet, I keep getting better and better jobs, I'm good. I don't know, but I think it's just it's been it's interesting everybody's point of view on it.
Yeah, for sure, and I think it's just nice. It's nice to know that people care. It's nice to know that they're thinking about you. You gave me some really good advice, or I asked you at one point, like, what can I do? Like, and you said, if you want to do something for me, when somebody sends you an invite on LinkedIn,
yes,
accept it.
Yes,
and I took that to heart, and I did that. Now
You got a lot of salespeople now hitting you up for things.
I got a lot of salespeople, and I got a lot of people that are the CEO of L'Oreal who wants to be my friend. That's the other thing.
Well, that's just me with multiple setups.
Yeah.
I trap old middle-aged men and steal all your data.
I'm getting catfish.
Yes.
Yeah. But I thought you really wanted to be my friend. No, but I did that, and I've been also very conscious of that. Even now, out of work. Yeah. I try to help.
Well, I think it's one of those things because I teach this college class in the evenings, and I got a lot of students, right? They're looking for their first job, and then I've got a lot of colleagues looking for their next job. And what I realized is connections are everything, relationships are everything, and while it might be like we don't want the hassle of LinkedIn and all these people pestering us and stuff like that, and actually I usually don't. If it's salespeople that I know are trying to sell me something, I typically don't accept theirs.
You didn't tell me that part.
Yeah. Well, live and you learn.
You were bitter that I...
Yeah, but I think there's just something so crucial about just the fact that you know a person at this organization and you want to work there. They don't know you. But the reality is, if they put your resume through, you go to the top of the list.
Yeah.
And if you get hired, they get paid.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win for both parties.
True.
And you can still go in and put somebody's resume in and not recommend them, right? Like, you're not saying you have to be recommending that person. You can just say, hey, the fact that it's got their name attached to the job recommendation now gets flagged by HR and it's not read by AI in the back room. And, so I think I don't think people realize how much that helps in getting you noticed. And it's just such a small little piece that doesn't take a lot of time or energy.
No, it doesn't. And it's funny, my job coach, he's really big on that. In fact, he gave me homework this week to find companies that I want to work at. Yeah. Find some people that work in the marketing, which is our background, and talk to them and just start a conversation. And don't, and be upfront and say, hey, I'm interested in working at your company. I am out of a job, but I want to talk to you. Like, what's it like to work there? Like, and truly find out what it's like to work there before you spend a lot of time and effort, because it might be not a great place to work. Or
But when you're unemployed, you don't care about that as much.
Yeah, I mean, I have put my application into Long John Silver's.
Yeah. Enjoy the diarrhea.
Well, I do enjoy that. I mean, I had my snack on the way here was Slim Jim, in honor of you, of course.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'm into health food. I mean,
Yes.
this is 0 sugar, so
Well, it's got to be good for you.
yeah. So okay, that's really good. So, kind of something to branch off of that. Not the last question. Then I do have one more question, and then we should probably wrap it up. But we could talk for hours, but I don't know if
I got nowhere to be.
yeah, you do. You do at 2:00.
Well, it's my lunch break. I'm good.
Some of us have to work, not me. LinkedIn. I was thinking about this today, and I don't know. And this might be maybe I'm just overthinking it, but LinkedIn and all the job boards. Indeed, is Monster still there? The thing.
Yeah, but what's happening is you've got a bunch of secondary sites that read all the job board sites,
Yeah.
and then compile it,
Yeah.
and you're seeing more and more traffic to those.
Yeah.
So once you click it, it goes to the site. But I think not so much because a lot of places don't want to pay
Right.
to have a job posting on a bunch of different sites. So they'll either have one site that they pay that goes to multiples, or they'll just try to do it for free somewhere. Like a lot of places, just like we'll just throw it on Indeed
Or
'cause it's free, or they'll put it on LinkedIn.
Or they'll go
'cause
to
it's free.
or they'll go to a recruiter and they'll hire a firm to go and headhunt.
Usually, though, they don't seem to do that until they fail by themselves.
That's true. That's true. That is true.
Or they have a role that, like, for us, like software engineers, so hard to find, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's just better to go to a recruiter than trying to find it yourself because it takes forever. But
Yeah. I think LinkedIn is an interesting tool for a job seeker, but also for an employer, because it's a double-edged sword. Because it's unprecedented access to a whole the world. I mean, you can see every job, and it's not just LinkedIn. It's all of these social media / job board sites.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to change my perspective on LinkedIn. I'm not bagging on it at all, but I guess you hear. I can't remember. It's a really small percentage of a chance of actually getting your job from an application that you put into LinkedIn.
Yes.
But it's it's almost like winning the lottery. So I have been, up until probably this week, really kind of viewing LinkedIn as like my conduit to finding out what's out there.
Yes.
But now I'm starting to think about it, and my job coach has been kind of gently getting me there. And I don't know if he's intentionally doing this, or if this is just where my brain went. But I'm viewing it more as like LinkedIn is my opportunity to point somebody to a clearinghouse of everything I've done. Like it's like a resume on steroids.
Right.
It's not going to be where I find my job. It might be how I get my job, but it's not where I'm going to find my job.
Right. It is. Think of it as the place. It's kind of your own website in a sense, right? Of your accomplishments, and it's the first place people go. Like if you hire somebody new, what's the first thing you do? You go to LinkedIn and look at who they are and where they came from, right? If you're evaluating resumes, you go to their LinkedIn profile. I also go to I just go and see what their
social media,
digital footprint is in general, right?
Right.
Which God help us when they look at our Halloween
I
costumes
made
on
that
Facebook.
private. I made all that private.
Mine's still public. So you're still screwed.
That might be what's going on.
Yeah, that's why you can't get hired. It's chips from 2010.
Was that 2010?
No, it's 2007, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a great costume.
Yeah. But I think, I think, so LinkedIn, I think, from my job perspective, outside of looking for work, but like, LinkedIn's become this sales platform that's just getting molested.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm disengaging from LinkedIn because all it is salespeople trying to sell me something.
Right.
And I can't be too bad because I do the same thing in my job as we are advertising to people on LinkedIn.
Well, I mean, it's a professional social media platform. Like
And
it's Facebook without the political
Yes.
rhetoric and family
That's
drama.
getting back on there. But
LinkedIn is turning into that. That's the problem. Is there's
so I'll be interested to see how it converges. But I think LinkedIn's where you make the connections and you start the relationships. LinkedIn is not where you get the job.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
You maybe you see that they're hiring.
Yeah.
Right? but just submitting a resume isn't enough anymore.
No.
It will not get you hired.
No. It won't even get you looked at.
Not a single interview that I have off of just sending in a resume. Not a single one.
I have the one. I take that back one time, but it wasn't just sending in a resume, so I don't take it back. It literally it was because I reached out to the hiring manager.
Yes.
And on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Because I paid for that service to be able to do that, which is interesting. But I agree with you. I think that's been a big shift for me. Is I need LinkedIn to find a job. It's like you need LinkedIn to get a job. You don't need using LinkedIn to find a job, unless you're in a very specialized field. Yeah. Which you're probably not on LinkedIn at that point. You're like if you're in a
if you're specialized, there's community.
There's community, and there's people that separate. There's like people that are professionally looking for those people. Like you said, like software engineers. Like you're not going to waste your time. I'd be curious to see if LinkedIn is even thinking about that, or do they care? I mean, they're probably happy being what they are. Sure, their revenues
selling to add dollars.
I need to look that up. Maybe I haven't seen, but yeah, it's really interesting. And I think that's some great advice that I was given that I would like other people to take is you need to be afraid. Don't be afraid to
just to be nice.
Well, be nice. Well, and make the phone call. Like, I think we get in our head, especially when you're busy and you're working and stuff, you get it in your head like, I'm not even naming any names, but like, so-and-so's calling. I really don't want to talk to so-and-so. Or somebody say, hey, you should call so-and-so. And you're like, I don't know if I want to call so-and-so. I don't know if I want to have a conversation right now. I mean, that's me. Yeah. Maybe that's just me, but I think there are times where I'm kind of conversationed out. Or I'm embarrassed because of like what you said in the beginning. Like, it's hard being at work. I remember running a race 2 or 3 weeks after I got let go. Mm-hmm. And it's a very common thing. You know, you're running with somebody and, you know, we're running for a while together because we're running the same pace. And so you're having this conversation. It's just common courtesy. It's just common, like, it's like, do you have kids? It's, you know, it's, which is a tough question to answer sometimes. But, you know, do you have kids? Do you, you know, what do you do? Yeah. And when you're laid off, you're like, I don't know. And then, you know, the other thing I thought was really strange that's for me that's been surprising is I'm still getting credit card offers. And I think that's because I'm in a severance period.
Well, and they're predatory. So, you know, they're just like, we're going to suck these people in. They're desperate for cash, probably. Right. We're going to get them line of credit and hit them with 15% interest. So that's just good marketing there, Sean. Come on.
Yeah, and I'll look at these things and I'm like, do they not know I'm a deadbeat? Like, but it's really interesting to me. So the last question, and then I had a joke that I don't, and I've been trying to find out. I think I have a way to weave it into this, but I might just be completely obvious about it because I think it'd be a funny bit. But anyway, my last question is: you could go back in time, and originally I was going to ask you. You go back in time, and I was going to ask you how far back would you go, but that doesn't matter. You can go back in time before you were let go. What advice would you give yourself for the day that it happened? Like, going through all the things you've been through and you're employed now, like, what things would you have said during the conversation? Would you have said anything differently? How would you have treated yourself that day? How would you have treated others? Like, anything? Or
So, yeah, I think, one, the shock of it just had me sort of clammed up, right? Like when I'm in the meeting with the VP or whatever their title was and the HR person, and they're going through this with me, I'm just like stunned silence. Like, I don't know what to say. The only thing I knew in my back of my head is I'm not signing shit at this table.
Yeah, and they tell you that.
Like, you know, like that was, and so that's one. Don't sign anything. I think, you know, and I wish I would have been more prepared to push back more for myself. Like, I didn't go back and ask for more. Yeah. Like, I've been with the company 17 years. like a 6-month severance after 17 years is kind of horseshit.
Yeah.
Right. And I wish I would have been more proactive in trying to get more, because I think they were giving me the minimum and hoping that I take it,
because it's all business for them,
right? It's all business for them, right? It's not, and what so I feel like I lost an opportunity there, financially, honestly.
Yeah. No, but that's
right. So
valid.
I think so I think that kind of stunk. That I wish I would have been more prepared, and I was a bit of an emotional mess. I kept it together until I got into my truck, and once I was in my truck, I lost my shit.
Yeah.
And
I
wish.
cried.
Oh, I bawled like a baby.
No, I mean during the thing.
Oh,
I totally
I
did at the end. Yeah.
But you knew it was coming.
I had a
Right?
feeling.
I think you knew it was coming.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah, I read the tea leaves.
And like they just showed up,
Right.
and there's this person that never comes to our office saying, "Hey, can you meet me in the conference room at like 8:10 in the morning?" I'm like, "Yeah, I didn't think anything of it." And I walk in.
Are you packing?
Right. And I walk in the room, and it's that person, the HR person. I'm like,
Here we go.
oh shit!
Yeah.
Like it hit me like a ton of bricks. But I didn't get a proper goodbye with my team.
Yeah, right.
Right?
That's
like
sucky.
I've been working with, one person had been there. She hired me. The other people, I hired them. Like 15, 16, 17 years. I think the shortest tenure person was like 2 or 3 years. But I couldn't say goodbye to them.
Even the cleaning
I
crew,
couldn't even.
like,
I couldn't even look at them.
Yeah.
Because I knew if I looked at them, I'd start crying, and I couldn't talk to them. Because at that point, I knew they were firing the team, but I had to ask them because they didn't tell me.
That would have been.
I had to ask them. I was like, "Well, what about my team?" That was like the one thing that came out of my mouth was, "Well, what about my team?" And they were just like, "Yeah, they're going to, but we're going to have them stay for a certain period of time." And then that was like. Then it took everything in my power not to lose it. So when I'm walking back to my office to get my jacket and my bag, I'm trying not to look at them because if I knew if I did, it would be reading on my face, and I couldn't. I didn't have like a proper goodbye, which I think kind of stuff. We met afterwards,
but still,
like we had lunch afterwards, but it just was different. And I think that's the beauty of when you leave on your own is you get to have those moments.
Yeah, you get to have a party,
right? Or at least a moment of like, reminiscing with people as you're kind of on your way out.
Well, unless you're a complete asshole.
Yeah.
They throw something for you.
Yeah.
Like somebody does.
So, so I feel like all of that was just, I think that's what I missed.
And by the way, if you left your company and they didn't throw a party for you, I'm not calling you an asshole. I mean, maybe you are.
Yeah, well, he just did, actually.
But you may want to reevaluate
You don't
how
have
you
any
treat
friends.
Yeah.
Start watching Mr. Rogers. Become a better person. But no,
I think that's the
when
thing.
I left Denny's, they threw a party for me.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, I think that's the big thing. I mean, there's nothing you can really go back and do. I know some people, when they got let go that day, just went off the rails.
Yeah.
And were like yelling at them.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anybody deserves that. I mean, I realize in general, it's a business decision. You might disagree with the decision. But the reality is, nobody ever wants to fire somebody, regardless, even when it's a business decision, and you have to toe the line, and you even had to make. The reality is, if you could not fire them, you would choose that
100%.
unless it's the same person that's an asshole that doesn't get a party when they leave. But you would not choose to do that. Like, and so I think there needs to be as much as you're angry at them for doing this, you need to realize that they would probably prefer not to.
Well, I think that's a perspective that you and I have that maybe not everyone has had, because I know I had to let people go. Yeah. And you had to too. And sometimes it was a decision that you had a say in, and sometimes it wasn't. Sometimes you were told you had to let this person go. But without a doubt, even whether it was my decision or I was a part of the decision or it wasn't my decision, I can't think of one person where I would have rather not done that. In fact, I would
even the people that I made the decision on.
Right.
I'm still like, how did I fail them? Why could I not get them to the point that I needed them to be at in order to stay?
Or was
on
there
board?
something else they could do?
Right.
Is there
Like,
another job?
Like,
that we
what
could
am
do?
I doing that is failing this person? And the reality was, it needed to happen. Like, if it's getting to the point and I'm making the call, I'm usually.
But you still didn't want to do it, and
Oh,
I
100%
remember you
no.
struggling with that. And I think that's important to remember when you're going through it too. Is that 9 times out of 10, if you're getting a severance, and even if you're not, because there's somebody that I really respect that may watch this that didn't get a severance,
Right.
Totally was unexpected, and I don't necessarily agree with what happened.
Yeah.
But 9 times out of 10, the person, especially the person in the room, does not want to be doing that.
No.
Or doesn't. They may agree with it, but they still don't want to do it, and they still don't think it's probably fair. But legally, they can't say anything. I mean, like they give you a whole thing.
You can't.
Like, you can only say these things, and don't do this and don't do that. And I think that's where the yelling and the screaming comes from. Is people that
You can't have a real conversation with somebody when they're getting let go. Like, that's the reality.
No, you just can't.
You can't.
And you can't afterwards, typically, either.
No.
I mean,
And so I think it's a tough spot to be. And it's a tough spot for everybody in the room. But yeah, it's just an ugly part of business. And that's the thing. It's like, oh, it's just business. Don't take it personally. Yeah, I get that. And it is. It's just business. But when the majority of your life is your career, even if you just work a 40-hour work week, that's still pretty much the majority of your life is your career. You can't not take it personally. And then it's always looming, because then you go in the next interval, why'd you leave this place?
yeah.
It's one of the first questions.
Can you explain this gap in your...
Right.
in your-
And like over COVID, I used to be very cognizant of that when I'm looking at resumes and stuff like that. And during COVID, I'm getting more and more resumes post-COVID of people that 2020, 2021, 2022 have just been through a shit ton of jobs. And at first I'm just like, ugh, like what the hell's going on here? And my wife was like, it was COVID. Everybody's getting canned in COVID. And it was true. Like, I just started talking to them about it, and that's what it was. Like, 9 times out of 10, it was like completely out of their control. And here I am judging the resume before I even talked to them over something that should have clicked in my head, that during COVID, people were in and out of jobs crazy.
Yeah.
And it's always going to be now this black eye on the resume that they'll never be able to get past unless they were young and they got another 30 years in them. And then it's like, well, we don't
And then it
want
gets
your-
pushed down.
Right, your resume, don't talk
It's
about
on page
anything
2.
more than 15 years ago. That's how you know you're old. Which we've both been through.
Oh, man. Yeah.
And then the sheet that they gave me showing everyone over the age of everyone's age of being fired to tell me it's not ageism.
Yeah.
I'm like,
And
I'm like a banana peel from Mall Santa now. That's how old you're saying I am. Like, just need my white beard.
Because were you 40, what were you, 42 when it happened?
Oh, let's see. Let's do the math. Yeah, 42, I think.
So
41, 42. Yeah.
It's wild that post 40 is considered, like, legally, they have to tell you certain things.
Well, and that's
they have
like-
to treat you certain ways.
But that's the big thing, too, when you're looking at jobs, right? Like, most of the jobs that are on the job boards are not for our generation.
No, and I feel young.
Right. Like, it is not. Like, there's just not a lot there. They want 10 years and under. That's most jobs you see out there are 10 years and under. And you're just like, that's like another realization that sort of hits you is you're just like, the pickings are slim.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of us out there looking. So they talk about how great the job market is. Yeah, it is if you're within these parameters. So I think that's the other. I mean, they all talk about job market. I'm like, but what job market is booming? They say it's, but what's booming?
Yeah.
Like that's just such a relative term.
Yeah,
But
LinkedIn's a really interesting space right now. Like, I'm reading all the comments, and there's some people I follow that I really respect. Like, I think there are recruiters that are genuinely trying. There are recruiters that are phoning it in, but I think there are recruiters that are genuinely trying. And I think they're trying to change how people get hired, which I think is good.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's all kinds of things that are emerging. LinkedIn's turned into this. It's a social media platform. It's a way to meet people. That's really what it is. And
Yes.
I mean, I guess that's what it's always been. I mean, it's called LinkedIn, so I think it was probably what I don't maybe I'm not the only one, but I think I brought to it. Well, this is where I'm going to get my job. No, this is where you're going to meet somebody that's going to help you get your job.
Yes.
But you got LinkedIn that's kind of changing and evolving. The conversation is getting really interesting there, and it is turning kind of, no offense to Facebook or anything, but it's turning into Facebook. Like there's a lot of memes getting posted and like
Political stuff.
Yeah. And people like, man, there's like this one dude that I connected with, and he keeps liking the same bikini pictures, and I just want to tell him like,
well, stop posting bikini pictures of yourself on LinkedIn.
well, I can't help myself. I gotta make money somehow. Yeah. Link to my OnlyFans is going to be in the podcast bio. But I think it's interesting. The other thing that's interesting is AI and how that's changing things, because I firmly believe you have AI combing resumes. You have AI creating resumes. It's probably the same engine.
Yes.
And so it's just
I can tell you right now.
It's like AI masturbation right now.
Right. I can tell you right now, every time I put in a job, and whenever I submitted my resume, I would change my resume and my cover letter to match the job description every single time. You know what? Now I'm looking at AI going, well, shit, I don't need to do that.
Well, you can do it, yeah.
I can take my resume
ChatGPT, yeah.
and then take it into ChatGPT, rewrite this, and then I'll room it afterwards. But it's just like, well, shit, that just made my life a lot easier.
So I got a buddy that, I don't know if you've met him. I'd like for him to come talk to us. He's a really neat guy, but he's doing a lot with AI. Like he works in that field now. And I brought that up about ChatGPT, and I apologize to the HR people that got my ChatGPT cover letter, but I had a day last 2 weeks ago where I applied for 25 jobs in one day, and I'm not gonna sit down for these 25 jobs and write a new cover letter,
right?
But I did. LinkedIn has a feature where if you have InMail, if you pay for that service, you can talk to the hiring manager if they put themselves out there. And they have a feature in that chat that says, would you like AI to write your cover letter? And it's really interesting. It'll go to your resume. It'll go to your profile. It'll go to the posting. It'll make the connections, and it'll write the cover letter so that it matches what they're looking for with who you are, or what your abilities you have. And I did that. And the first few times I read it and made some edits, the other times I was just like, whatever, sin. And, and of course I'm feeling sorry for myself. But like, what I was sharing that with Danny, and he goes, Sean, I can spot something written by AI a mile away. And he said people that know AI will be able to spot that.
But most people don't.
Yeah. But if you got to think about it, if this hiring manager is putting their ass out there, and they got all these yahoos like me, shout out to the original search engine. Actually, was it the original? Ask Jeeves, maybe?
I don't know. Jeeves was later. I think it might have been the original. That was my first email account, was Yahoo. Which I still have. It's my junk email.
I have a Hotmail account.
Okay.
I don't use it. That's the other thing. Anyway, so, I imagine, though, if you put your ass out there and they have that feature, they probably got the same letter from hundreds of people.
Yes.
And so,
but I remember doing, because this was pre-ChatGPT, there was these online things where you could
cut and paste.
Well, no, you put the job posting in, and then you would take. Oh, that's what it was. No. You take your resume and you put it into this, and it would tell you how the computer read it.
Oh,
right. So you put your resume in. So you put your Word document in or whatever. So for all the companies where you have to upload your stuff into their systems then automatically recognize your education. And these places, and you worked, and it's trying to piece all that together to put these things together. And the way you write it or the way you tab it or indent it could blow it all up. So you enter your resume into this, and then it goes through and shows you what the computer sees, so then you can adjust it so that it is read properly. by the computer, and I spent
crazy.
hours, and I had to keep, because I didn't want to pay for it either because I'm cheap, so I keep going into different websites or creating different emails so I could keep doing the free version until I was tapped out of the free version in order to get it.
Yeah.
But like the amount of work that goes into that is just exhausting.
Right, it's crazy.
It's
And
exhausting.
It's crazy. It's just so that you can get into this, so you can be listened to and heard. It's crazy.
Right. So your resume is not gibberish.
Which, it's like some days I get like frustrated by it, but then some days I'm like, well, shit. I mean, if they're getting 400 applications,
Yes.
then they got to do something. I mean, they can't read 400 applications, And who am I? I'm not that special. I mean, I'm pretty special.
But that's why having the connections,
yeah.
with those people, that helps because
See, I think AI is dangerous. Not for me personally.
Yeah.
And here's where the joke comes. I was thinking about this.
okay,
So, Stephen Hawking, he's dead.
is he?
He's dead.
Okay.
If I had access to his technology he used to talk, I would be pranking you guys. If I was dead and I had that technology, I would write code, and he was smart enough,
Right.
write code that like every 5 years, it's like, I'm not dead.
Elvis. Imagine if Elvis had this, and all the Elvis people.
Yeah.
JFK Jr. or whatever.
Yeah,
like, all
I
these
am alive. I
conspiracies.
am
yeah.
alive. Yeah, vote for me.
Yeah,
2020.
imagine your funeral. What you could do at your funeral
Yeah.
with.
Just a cough.
Yeah. Yeah. Damn it, Tom!
Where did that come from?
Did you take? See, the allergies are still kicking up. Yeah. No, I think that's funny.
I think that, I mean, it was okay. It was better in my head. All right, well, thank you, Jim. I had a lot of fun. Now, we're going to be doing this together.
Yes.
And this is the first episode, so I'm sure we'll get better. But I thought this was a lot of fun.
Yes.
And, yeah.
If we're not getting better, just let us know, and we'll start drinking. Then maybe
Yeah,
we'll get better.
and not just Monster.
Yeah. But yeah, I think this will be a fun ride. See where it takes us.
Okay, cool. Well, I don't have any like cool sign off or anything like that, but really appreciate it. I think this will be fun. I'm really looking forward to doing this with you. And
Glad you let me do it with you.
Oh,
I 100% invited myself to this.
no, well,
Yeah.
we talked about that. We can make an episode about that. And I think the other thing I want to talk is I think the other thing that we need to think about is putting some of these resources that we talked about. So maybe we should start taking notes, or when we go back and look at this,
Yes.
like you mentioned that aggregator that takes your, like,
Yeah, I'd have to find it. It's been a few
maybe
years,
start
yeah.
putting those links and stuff in there, and
Yeah.
kind of be a resource, because this will be conversational. I think this will be a lot of fun. I think it could be funny as well as like helpful. I want it to be a little bit of both, but and we won't always talk about being separated from companies. I mean, we may be
No.
talking about all kinds of things, but I think it's good to also have
That
those
would get
resources.
old quick.
Yeah.
And then we would just sound bitter.
Well, and then if I get a job, I'm not gonna. Maybe this will be my job. But anyway, well, awesome.
It's been fun.
Yep.